There is a hotel corridor in the Croatian city of Zadar where, more than 30 years ago, a small, skinny boy kicked a football against cold concrete walls, over and over, for hours. He had no pitch, no academy, no coach, no promise that the building he slept in would still be standing when the sun came up. His country was at war. His home was gone. His grandfather had been murdered. And still, he played. That boy would grow up to lift 6 Champions League trophies, win the Ballon d'Or, and captain his tiny nation to a World Cup final. And now, decades later, football is watching the final chapter of a story that should never have been possible. This is the story of Luka Modrić, how a refugee child became one of the greatest midfielders the game has ever seen, and why his farewell marks the end of an era. Chapter 1. A Child of the Mountains. Luka Modrić was born on the 9th of September, 1985, in Zadar, a coastal town in what was then Yugoslavia. His family came from the tiny hamlet of Modrici, tucked into the harsh, rocky slopes beneath the Velebit Mountains. His parents, Stipe and Radojka, were factory workers. There was no wealth here, just stone houses, hard land, and family. As a 5-year-old, little Luka spent his days shepherding goats on the mountainside, living close to his grandfather, also named Luka, the man he was named after, the man he adored. It was a simple, quiet life. And then, almost overnight, that life was destroyed. Chapter 2. When the war came. In 1991, Croatia declared independence, and war erupted. For the Modrić family, the violence wasn't something on the news. It was personal. It arrived at their front door. In December of 1991, Serbian militia captured Luka's grandfather on a road near the family home while he was watching over his cattle. He was executed alongside several other locals. Luka was just 6 years old. Later, the family home was burned to the ground. The village was abandoned. For years afterward, signs warned that the surrounding land was littered with landmines. Years later, Modrić, a man who rarely speaks about his pain, would say quietly, "Modrić," quote on screen, "the Chetniks killed my grandfather. I loved him so much." Everyone cried. Chapter 3. Growing up in a hotel. For much of his childhood, Luka Modrić did not have a home. He grew up as a refugee, living in a series of rundown hotels in Zadar that had been turned over to displaced families. The Hotel Kolovare, the hotel is. There was often no running water, no electricity, and the sound of artillery shelling became part of daily life. Sirens interrupting school, playtime, and sleep. But here's the extraordinary part. In the middle of all of that, the fear, the loss, the uncertainty, the boy found the one thing that made sense to him. A football he played in the hotel parking lots. He played alone in the corridors. Coaches from that time still tell the story of a hyperactive little boy who took his football everywhere, who even took it to bed with him. Modrić himself, looking back, refuses to describe it as tragic. When you are a kid, you don't think about the war. I had a nice childhood, even though I grew up in hotels. That ball wasn't just a toy. It was an escape, and it was about to become his entire future. Chapter 4. Too small, too skinny, too weak. Talent alone did not open doors for Luka Modrić. He trained at his local club in Zadar, guided by a coach named Tomislav Basic, a man Modrić would later call his sporting father. But there was one problem that followed him everywhere: his size. Modrić was small, slight, skinny, and to the big clubs, that was a deal-breaker. Hajduk Split, the giant of Dalmatian football, the very club he supported as a boy, rejected him. They looked at this frail, lightweight teenager and decided he'd never survive the physical brutality of professional football. It's a verdict that has aged about as badly as any decision in football history. But one club took the gamble. When Modrić was 16, Dinamo Zagreb, the biggest club in Croatia, signed him. And then they did something clever. They decided to toughen him up. Chapter 5. Forged in Fire. To harden their fragile young talent, Dinamo sent Modrić out on loan into one of the most hostile, physical leagues in the region, the Bosnian top flight, with Zrinski Mostar. He was 18. Defenders tried to kick him off the pitch. They wanted to break the slight little playmaker. Instead, he broke them. Modrić didn't just survive. He was named the best player in the entire league. Another loan followed, at Inter Zaprasic, where he won Croatia's Young Player of the Year. By the time he returned to Dinamo Zagreb for good, the doubts were gone. He was no longer a question mark. He was the most exciting young midfielder in the Balkans. He won league title after league title. He captained the side. And with his first big contract, he did the thing that told you everything about who he was. He bought a flat in Zadar for his family. Europe was watching now. Chapter 6. Tottenham and the Premier League Test. In 2008, Tottenham Hotspur brought Modrić to the Premier League for around £16 million. And once again, the old doubts came back. The English game was fast, brutal, physical. Pundits questioned whether this slender Croatian could handle it. Early on, some even wrote him off. But Modrić did what he always did. He adapted, he got stronger, he got smarter. Over 4 seasons, he became the heartbeat of Tottenham's midfield, and in 2010, he helped lead the club to Champions League qualification for the first time in almost 50 years. He had conquered England, but his greatest chapter was still ahead, and it would be written in white. Chapter 7. Real Madrid and Immortality. In 2012, Real Madrid signed Luka Modrić for around £30 million, and the start was rocky. One Spanish newspaper voted him the worst signing of the season. Think about that. The worst signing of the season. What followed was one of the greatest redemption stories in football history. Modrić didn't just win over the doubters. He became the engine of the most dominant era in Real Madrid's modern history. Over more than a decade at the club, he made nearly 600 appearances and won an astonishing 28 trophies, making him the most decorated player in Real Madrid's entire history. Among them, 6 UEFA Champions League titles, 4 La Liga titles, Copa del Rey's, Club World Cups, Super Cups, a trophy cabinet almost too big to believe. He was the quiet metronome in a team of superstars, the man who made everything tick. And in 2018, he finally stepped fully out of the shadows. Chapter 8. The Summer That Changed Everything, 2018. The World Cup in Russia. Croatia, a country with a population smaller than many single cities, had no business going deep in a World Cup. But they had Luka Modrić. He dragged them through grueling knockout battles, extra time after extra time, all the way to the final, the first in the nation's history. They lost that final to France, but Modrić walked away with the Golden Ball, the award for the best player of the entire tournament. And then came the moment that ended an era. For a decade, only 2 names had won the Ballon d'Or, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. In 2018, Luka Modrić broke it. He won the Ballon d'Or. He won FIFA's Best Men's Player. He won UEFA's Best Player in Europe. The skinny kid from the Refugee Hotel, rejected for being too small, was now, officially, the best footballer on the planet. Chapter 9. The Eternal Captain. Most players would have faded after that peak. Modrić refused. He led Croatia again to the semi-finals of the 2022 World Cup, finishing 3rd and collecting the bronze ball, in his late 30s. His teammates describe a man who trains as if he's still fighting to earn a contract at Dinamo. A quiet leader, not a shouter, a standard setter. The kind whose example in the gym says more than any dressing room speech. In 2025, after 13 legendary years, Modrić said goodbye to Real Madrid, the most decorated player in the club's history. But he still wasn't done. At 39 years old, he joined Italian giants AC Milan on a free transfer, becoming the oldest player ever to debut in Serie A. And he scored, of course, within weeks. In 2026, at the age of 40, Luka Modrić was still there, captaining Croatia at yet another World Cup, playing his 200th cap for his country, joining the tiny club of legends still competing at the very top into their 40s. Chapter 10. More than a footballer. Off the pitch, the boy who had nothing never forgot where he came from. He quietly donated to hospitals in Zadar and Zagreb. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he funded medical equipment, often anonymously because he never wanted the credit. Croatian universities have studied his impact, not just on football, but on the country's economy, tourism, and identity on the world stage. A boy who once had no home became, in many ways, the face of an entire nation. Conclusion. Think back to that hotel corridor in Zadar. A war outside, a grandfather gone, a home reduced to ashes and landmines. A small, skinny boy that every big club said was too weak to make it. By every logic, Luka Modric's career should never have been possible. And yet, 6 Champions Leagues, a Ballon d'Or, a World Cup final, the most decorated player in the history of Real Madrid, still playing at 40. His story isn't just about talent. It's about a boy who kept playing against cold concrete walls, because football was the one thing the war couldn't take from him. The verdict said he was too small. He turned out to be a giant. And when he finally walks off the pitch for the last time, football won't just lose a player. It will lose one of the last of a golden generation, the quiet maestro who outlasted them all. This isn't just the end of a career. It's the end of an era.